Hi there, my name is Aaron and I lead worship on the streets in Newcastle and around Northumberland as well. I'm a part of the evangelistic training program with counties and it's great to be sharing with you today. Today I want to talk about choices. It's near the start of the year, so we've still got a whole year ahead of us. And every month, every week, every day, every minute, we will be making choices. And these choices will not just affect us, but they'll affect our families, they will affect our ministries, they'll affect the churches that we're a part of, they'll affect the people that we're called to serve. So with so many choices ahead of us, how do we navigate these choices? How do we know we're going to be making the right ones? Now, firstly, I just want to say that the ability to choose is a really good thing. It's a sign of the freedom that we live in, both spiritually speaking and the freedom that we live in this country as well. I also think that the ability to choose is key to our growth and our maturity, both as disciples of Jesus and as just part of becoming a normal, healthy human being as well. So I think the ability to choose is a really good thing. But sometimes having too much choice can be daunting and overwhelming. Before I started leading worship on the streets, my wife and I lived in Indonesia. We lived in rural Papua. And it was actually, our house was 6,000 feet up on the side of a mountain. And you can see the picture behind me. That was the view from our house every morning. We had the mountains ahead of us and we had clouds below us. It was a beautiful part of the world to live in and a real privilege to live in that community as well. But as I say, it was quite a simple way of life. It was very rural. And the nearest shops were actually 4 hours away. It was an hour and a half hike to what they call the taxi stand, where lots of 4x4 vans parked up. And they just waited until the vans were full. And from that point on, there was a 2.5 hour drive through the mountains to the nearest shops. Quite a different way of life to what we had been used to. But as different as it was, in many ways it was harder coming back to the UK, adjusting to the life we had previously known. One example comes to mind, and that was our first visit to a supermarket. We had got ready, we knew what we wanted to buy, we had our shopping list, and as we walked through the front doors, both of us suddenly stopped. We looked at each other as we both experienced this sense of overwhelm. The overwhelm was actually caused for both of us by the amount of choice that was before us. We'd been so used to the shops in Indonesia just being small huts that used to sell the same kind of products. Suddenly being faced with aisle upon aisle upon aisle upon aisle of choice of such a wide variety of different things, whether that's the aisle for crisps, the aisle for cereal, the aisle for chocolate, the aisle for vegetables or fruit. All of those choices suddenly became overwhelming. And I think that life can be like that. As I say, it's great that we celebrate the freedom we have and the ability to choose. But sometimes, and maybe at the start of the year, it can be a bit overwhelming to navigate the choices that lie ahead of us. So how do we do this and how do we do it well? Well, of course, we can look to Scripture. And in particular, I want to look at two people today who I think made amazing choices. Two people who, for me, provide such inspiration. The first is David, the shepherd boy who became king. And although his job description changed, his heart never did, and everywhere he went and whatever role he was performing, he carried this heart of worship. I think you can really see this heart for worship in Psalm 27. I'm just going to read that out now. David writes these words: "One thing I ask of the Lord, this is what I seek, that I may dwell in the house of the Lord all the days of my life, to gaze upon the beauty of the Lord and to seek him in his temple." Such beautiful and powerful words from David the worshipper. And I find that what makes them even more powerful is that they were written in a time of real challenge and struggle and battle. If you read the verses around it and after it, they were just, you can see that David is fighting for his life. And in the middle of that battle, he says, The one thing he asks of the Lord is not deliverance, it's not help. The one thing he chooses to ask of God is to spend time in his presence. The one thing he asks for is to spend time in God's presence. Amazing example and such inspiration for us. And these words and this example are also echoed in the New Testament as well. The famous story of Mary and Martha. Of course, we know that Jesus was visiting their home, and on his arrival, it says that Martha was distracted by all the preparations that had to be made. Jesus had come and had arrived, and yet Martha was distracted by all the preparations. Mary, on the other hand, chose to sit at Jesus' feet and listen to him speak. Martha gets upset by Mary's choice and speaks to Jesus about it. And this is what Jesus says. Martha, Martha, you are worried and upset about many things, but only one thing is needed. Mary has chosen what is better, and it will not be taken away from her. I love Jesus' response. Firstly, because Jesus acknowledges that there are many things to do. He acknowledges that there are things to be worried about. He acknowledges that there are preparations to be made. He acknowledges the situation around him. But he affirms Mary's choice. He says one thing is needed. Again, echoing David's words, one thing is the priority here. Amongst all these priorities, one thing is needed. And that was to sit at his feet and listen, to spend time in his presence. And secondly, I love it, and I think it's such an encouragement for us, that he says the thing that Mary chose, which is to spend time in his presence, will not be taken away from her. I find that really encouraging in light of the year we have all just had. So much has been taken away from us. So much change and upheaval has happened in almost every area of life. We've had to change the way we do ministry, and some of the things that we were doing in ministry have now disappeared. The way we did church has changed, and some of the things that we used to do and take for granted have been lost. The way we do friendships and relationships has changed. A lot has been taken away from us over the last year in 2020. But as we start 2021, let Jesus' words be an encouragement to each of us, that choosing to spend time in his presence will never be taken away from us. What we invest in with our relationship with God, sitting in his presence, worshipping in prayer and listening to his word, will never be taken away from us. It is an eternal investment of our time. So there we have David and Mary choosing in the middle of all the choices that were available to them, whether it was struggle and challenge and battle in that David situation, or whether it was distraction and preparations to be made in Mary and Martha's situation. Both David and Mary chose the one thing that was their priority, to spend time in God's presence. And I think that's a real encouragement and inspiration for each of us. I think that as the year starts and as we're working through priorities and plans, that the one thing that Jesus affirms is to spend time with him, and that will be an eternal investment for each of us and will help us navigate all of the other choices that we do need to make. Let that be our one thing this year. Jesus, I thank you for the invitation to sit at your feet, to enjoy your presence and listen to you speak. And I thank you for the example of David and Mary, who in the face of different situations and different choices chose this one thing. Would you give us the grace and the desire to choose this one thing ourselves this year? Amen.